Welcome to Planet 1390 Voyage, Mr. Barely Available. What's your formal name that I can call you by?
Jason, or you can call me, people call me Barely, call me Jason. Either one, I'll answer. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Jason. So I want to start this interview off by kind of digging into like who you are as an artist and who you what brought you to this journey and what brought you to Barely Available and yeah, what's your journey? What has your journey been?
Sure. Well, I grew up always interested in comics and collectibles and art. I grew up born in the late 70s, so I went through all the He-Man and Thundercat stuff in the 80s, and just kept, as action figures, Ninja Turtles, this GI Joes, all kinds of stuff that I always wanted to get my hands on and collect. And I grew up with a single mom, so I came home after school and did what I needed to do, but then was always drawn, reading comic books. So just kind of been around that kind of pop culture art my whole life, interested in collectibles and different things. I think even before I realized, oh, that people, there was toys, not
Yeah.
collectibles,
Yeah.
at the time. So just doing that, then, going through life, having various people tell me, well, that's cute that you like that stuff, but you need to get a job. You need to get a real job and do stuff, so I kind of didn't know what I wanted to really do growing up. Didn't know, college just wasn't for me. I did a year of it and was like, meh, but I
I
still know what
definitely
I want to
understand.
do. So my buddies and I, we decided to launch a production company. And so I owned like a video and design company for
Oh, wow.
8 or 9 years, based out of Fresno, California, with a couple of my friends. Um, Went from there. Uh, I sold my share to them because they wanted to kind of do some different stuff, and I wanted to stay in animation, like digital
Okay.
animation using After Effects and frame by frame animation. And so I ended up working at an video ad agency down in Orange County,
Okay.
and was there for a couple of years, and then ultimately moved on to work. It used to be called Lynda.com, but they were
Oh yeah, we know
acquired.
Lin
Yeah,
Lynda.com. What did they change to?
they were acquired by LinkedIn a
Okay.
number of years ago, and now they're called LinkedIn Learning.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I worked there as an animator at first, and then became a people manager. And so I wasn't making anything in my day to day. I was managing the people who do.
Right, right.
And my wife lovingly looked at me and said, "You got to figure out something to do because you're driving us all crazy. Like, because you're not. I was just pent up with that
It's
creative
hard being an
energy.
artist. It is. People don't
Yeah,
understand it. Yeah.
yeah." And so she lovingly said, "Figure something out.
Yeah.
Do
Oh my
something with that
gosh.
energy." And I had a few months previous bought my first 3D printer, and because I was fascinated with that whole idea of like you could
Awesome.
make something and turn it into a tangible thing. And I had, at the time, really my only experience with 3D was a program called Cinema 4D, which is for animating,
Right, right.
you know, uh,
The
digital
model.
3D,
The
yeah,
model.
modeling
Hmm.
and stuff. So I used very, very basic and primitive shapes and kind of came up with my first figure that I wanted to make. And luckily for me, it was this guy. It was
That's
Barely.
awesome.
And so that was, I spent a lot of time just trying to think of something that, uh, would be simple and clean and that I could do more to, draw
Right,
on
right.
it, paint on it, just give myself a canvas. And I loved, well, obviously you're a pop collector,
All
but
day.
the simplicity when they first started out, all of the shapes were, I mean, pretty much the
The
same.
same thing. Yeah,
The
because I have
body
some
is, go for it.
just basically what you're saying. Like I have some Enders games right here.
Yeah,
These are from what, 2013?
something
So
looks like
yeah,
that.
these are old. But yeah, it was the same exact shape over and over again for a
Yeah, and
long
at the
time.
at the time, like early on, I had, so that was when I did Barely was probably 2016 is where the idea
Started
really
to
came, and I
emerge.
started playing with him 2016 or maybe 2017. Um, getting that first 3D print of him. But I had been collecting Funko since like 2009. I got the early
Wow,
Star
you were
Wars.
at the start.
yeah, early on, I mean, I just was walking through a Target and I saw, I'm a big Chewbacca fan.
Hey, Star
And
Wars.
yeah, and so I saw a Chewbacca Star Wars pop on the shelf at Target, and then next to it they had Batman, Robin, those pops. So I picked some of those up. And I was like, these
Right,
figures are
right,
super cool, and I just kept looking at them and going. And I loved the how with colors and the paint and stuff they applied to it
right,
without a
right.
whole lot of detail changing. You're like, oh, I recognize that character. I recognize that character. You
But
know?
before I get too deep into that, I want to know about you. Like, how did you like your calling to art? Like, what was that
Oh,
journey like before college, before everything? Like, were you drawing all the time? What was your
yeah.
process? What was your
Yeah,
process of like developing your artistic style?
sure. A lot of it was just being a latchkey kid at home and reading comic books and emulating art styles. I loved in the afternoons where I lived, they would play the 66 Adam West Batman in the
Mm.
afternoons.
The
So
classic, the OG.
I mean I'm a big
Yeah, I see that
Batman fan.
logo. Yep.
And I loved the cheesiness and the campiness of that, and as a kid it was, endearing and then just diving more into Batman and getting into the Frank Miller Batman, The Dark
Oh
Knight.
yeah. Frank Miller, the
Uh,
same man who made Sin City. Oh, that's a
yeah,
that's a legend to me. And
yeah.
growing up, I was really into the Green Hornet.
Oh yeah.
That was my Batman because Bruce Lee, I was obsessed with
Bruce
Bruce
Lee.
Lee.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, and that's part of like that same town I lived in, they did a kung fu theater on Saturdays and
That's
would play all
awesome.
the old Bruce Lee movies and
Yeah.
and so all that kind of stuff kind of influenced just it's part of what I was into, and then with the comic books uh trying to look and copy,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know
Learn from the
uh
masters.
yeah, and then just then kind of going, well, I don't want people to think, oh, you just ripped that off. So I would try to do my own thing. And a
Got
good
you.
buddy of mine, when we were in junior high, probably seventh grade, we came up with like our own comic book. And this guy's name was, we called him Gatling because he
That's
was in an
cool.
accident and they had to replace his arm with a Gatling gun.
That's cool.
And, and just all this corny stuff, this junior high boys we were doing. And so we made our own comic book, and we tried to save up money to go. His dad was a manager for a Kinko's coffee
Oh,
shop,
he
and
goes.
yeah, we're
Wow,
like
blast
we
from the
tried to make
past.
some little copies of copies of our comic book and
Yeah.
friends to buy them for 50 cents, and
Kinkos. Wow.
and so he would work on the story and then I would draw him and then he would color them, and then I'm like, bro, you need to stick to just the writing. Let me color these.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so that was like early on, just really trying to do that comic stuff and the ideas of like trying to make characters and think about like what would make this character appealing and what would make this interesting, and obviously the putting that through the lens of a seventh grade boy versus,
And
getting
see,
older and thinking about that is totally different, but for sure.
but that's why I imagine people like you are legends, and sometimes it takes longer for you guys to get into the industry and break
Mm,
off because certain resources weren't given to you all in the same exact way, right? So you had to go out there and take your journey, and you had to learn along the way. It's kind of like that's kind of like how Eastman and Laird started the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Just kind of, hey, dude, you ink this, and I'll just draw it out. That's the exact same way. So
yeah.
you come from that same period of time, and it's nice to speak to you about that. So, um. Tell me about your process of building characters. Like, how did you all sit down and write the storylines together, and how was the I guess conceptualizing for you?
I mean, keep in mind we were in junior high, so it wasn't
Yeah,
anything super deep. It was more like our filter of, is this cool or is this
yeah,
lame?
yeah.
And then we're like, well, sometimes, well, there's got to be, the level we would think about it is like all the cool stuff. Our heroes had to have all the cool stuff, but then there should be something that makes them like their weakness,
Right, right.
or that makes them like, oh, they have to overcome this weakness, or something that the villain can like leverage to
Yeah,
mess with
use
them.
against
And
them.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then having villains like Skeletor and Mumra and stuff in our mind of from
Go
our
to.
the cartoons.
Yep.
Skeletor's like the big bad guy, but he's always like,
Yeah.
Sounds just like what a
Yeah.
nerd, you know? It's like
Exactly.
or like, Mumro, he always has to announce himself, the
Yeah. Yeah.
ever living, or it's like whatever. These guys are so
But that's what
like
made
on an
Scooby
ego trip.
that's what made Scooby Doo great too. That they always had to announce themselves and then you found out they were frauds. So like
Yeah.
that's what made them so great.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
they were just like, I would have got away for it if it wasn't for
But
you
meddling
kids,
kids,
It's
exactly.
like, well, he got taken down by a bunch of kids.
Exactly.
But
How
that's
bad are you?
empowering as it's empowering as a kid, but also like, dude, these guys aren't all
They're
there.
not up there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for
So
sure. So go ahead.
no, I was about to say let's fast forward to like I remember because I'm married also, and it's funny that you brought up like my wife was like figure out something. And to be honest with you, I'm at that point right now in life. I'm what? I'm almost 34, so it's like you get on something, you figure it out. So what was the age where you felt like you started to figure it out?
I
And
mean,
what was that process?
that for me it was in my I would say early 40s,
Mm,
late 30s, where that's where my wife was just encouraging me, like to do something. It's like I had to sit there and kind of go, well, okay, what things do I know?
yeah, yeah,
Because
exactly.
I want to do something. For me, I was, like I said, fascinated with characters, but really fascinated with 3D printing and then making silicone molds and having something repeatable, and like it's like generating your own canvas to work
Right,
on.
right, right.
Because for me, and the reason Barely is so simple is because I wanted something I could iterate on, like I could keep
Exactly. Something that you can
drawing on,
use right
painting
now.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really, we had two young boys. Right now, my kids are 13 and 9, but they were a year old and 4 or 5 when this was going on, and so the boys would go to bed at night, 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. My wife would have projects she's doing or whatever, and so I'm garage and work on this stuff or try to figure out how to iterate on it. I'm on my Instagram on a while back. I posted kind of version one of what I thought Barely would be, then two, and then what he ultimately came out as, and just having that time to tweak on it and iterate on it was valuable. It
Absolutely.
wasn't, I mean, I know there are people who just first shot right out of the park, they nail it, and it's like, wow, but for
Yeah,
me, it
that's
was about the process.
it's like a zigzag, man. Like it's because you can know a lot of things, you could be talented at a lot of things at one time, and but it's still hard to find that avenue, and it's creepy at some point because it's like, what am I gonna do? Finances are never gonna stop coming in. Like
Yeah.
bills are always gonna happen. So I'm gonna lead to the point, like what brought you to because you said you've always been interested in mold making and the 3D machine. So exactly what was it that I guess pushed you to go and start teaching you? Did you teach yourself or did you go to a class for like what was that like?
It was really teaching myself. I'm old enough that I remember life pre-internet and pre-YouTube, right? And going
YouTube.
to the library and trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
But nowadays, YouTube University, man, that's what we joke. My
They
buddy
have
and I
all this
joke
power
about.
in their hands and they still can't socialize, man. It's weird. Like they have
Yeah.
all this, but that's the problem. They're computers now. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So there's a benefit, right, of living, having walked in both worlds. I feel like I'm Blade or something, right?
No, no, yeah. Half vampire, half daywalker.
Yeah. But having done that and reaping the benefits of realizing how powerful it is to have all the information at your fingertips, right? So I don't, I think my kids will probably take for granted for a while, like, oh, I could, learn on YouTube or, whatever. But so I would just watch YouTube videos, look up
Yep.
people who had similar 3D printers to mine in case I was having a problem. They would talk about how to solve it. And just I would try to look up videos on people talking about character design and what makes appealing characters, or just like anything I could fill my brain with.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, though, it's like I didn't try to copy what they were doing. I tried to scrape away what nuggets felt right to me and put that in my arsenal. And then the
Right,
stuff that
right.
like that doesn't work for me. That's not my jam. That maybe
Exactly.
works for somebody else. And just till I developed kind of what I liked, and what will work for me. And it just, it's a process, right? It's I feel like if you I don't know if I fully believe this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's like if it's in kind of an overnight thing, it's gonna just jump and fizzle, and then you have to
It's
find
gonna
your
take
next
fast.
thing, you know?
Exactly, exactly.
But when it's a slow burn to get there and it kind of builds and
When it's
builds and it's
substantial, when it's real, that's when it
yeah,
takes a long time to develop. Yes,
yeah. And then I
absolutely.
feel like it's a little longer lasting, right? And
Yes,
whether that goes
absolutely.
for skill sets or art, craft, whatever kind of stuff. It's even the analogy of like building something with uh higher quality materials is going to last longer, right?
Right, exactly.
So putting more knowledge and more craft behind it, I feel like the length it can last has more legs to it.
Absolutely. So, after all that, because again, a lot of we almost have to give ourselves disclaimers these days. Like, I don't want to copy anybody, but it's not really copying. It's absorbing the information that
Hmm.
came out, and it's forming your own style from it. It's the same thing
Right.
when people try to teach themselves a guitar. Like, there's different teachers, but you learn your own structure, right? So no, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking. That's what the resource is for these days, right? That's
Right.
We didn't have that back then. Like you said, like if it wasn't in the library, we didn't find out about it until we found somebody who was in the industry and knew how to do that. Like
Yeah.
it's just a different world now. That's why people can make content. People can figure things out faster now because they have the resources. We didn't.
Yeah.
But going into barely available, what was the beginning of, I guess, the formulation of barely available? Like you obviously had the concept of the bear, and to almost like make him a pop culture connoisseur to like be
Sure.
dressed up as different, you know. And I see a lot of tiny ghosts back there too.
Oh
Those
yeah.
are those are cool. You didn't create tiny ghosts, did you?
No,
Okay.
well, let me share with you. So Reese, like I said, Reese, who does Tiny Ghost,
Yeah. Okay.
he became a friend and kind of a mentor to me, and I was just a fan. And if you look back years and years on their Instagram, there were little animations of Tiny Ghost.
Yeah.
I made those as a fan and shared them with Reese, and he's like, "Can I post these? These are cool."
Wow.
Started chatting and whatever, and then just before the pandemic in 2020, he asked me to be a part of BIM and so some of the barely releases that I did, I the first 8 barelies were on my own, all
Wow.
by myself. But after that, there was a number of them we did together until BIM kind of closed. And now Reese is doing stuff with Fugitive, and I'm not part of that. But what I was gonna say is this Tiny Ghost, I'm I I'm pretty proud of because I sculpted the bones that went
That is
inside of these.
sick.
And so they cast these in resin. So I got
Man.
to be a part of a tiny ghost in that, it's not going to focus. There we go.
No, no, but I can see it. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous. My God, that's gorgeous. You know,
So
it
they
makes
did
me.
these in resin and I got to do the bones inside and I sculpt
Ooh.
that because he'd seen me I was double casting some Bearleys and doing, bones inside of Bearleys. He's like, man, I love that
That's
look. And I said,
nice.
why don't we do it for Tiny Ghost? And we worked together to do it. And then they did, I think, 3 different ones. So I have a copy of each one, if they were kind enough to give me because I, worked on them. But yeah, so I got to do that. And I also got to do, I was the only other artist
Man, that
that
was
they did
beautiful.
a signature Tiny Ghost. So this is my But
I
thank
like
thanks
that.
to this was inspired by working from home during the pandemic.
You know what it kind of reminds me of too? Do you remember that show Dilbert?
Yeah, yeah, Dilbert.
Yeah, it kind of
Hmm.
reminds me of Dilbert and it
I
makes me
hear
think of
it.
like Office Space. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
like those.
But
That's cool.
the pandemic messed that one up too. But
Yeah, dang.
so that was fun to work with those guys and do some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing, amazing. So, what do you, man, I don't even, there's so many questions I want to ask you, but now my brain is like kind of swimming.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so when you started learning the 3D machine, how long was that process for you? Like, because that still takes a while.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then the 3D printer that I started out with was a filament printer. So it was a big roll of plastic, like
Hmm.
a thread, and it just prints it layer by layer. But so when you get it off the printer, nowadays they're far more detailed. than 8 years ago, 9 years ago when I was doing it. Um, but so when you get a print off, you'd have to sand it and sand it and sand it and
Yeah,
sand it
yeah.
and sand
So it
it to
doesn't
try
like
to
look
get it
rolly.
smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it looked all these little layer lines.
Hmm.
And so just trying to figure out that, and then there's all this. I'm gonna call it science because that's what it feels like to me. These
It is
these guys
science.
have figured out like if you have your figure like this, your layer lines are going to be more pronounced. But if you turn it at a 35-degree angle when you print, because of the way the layer lines seem
Yeah,
to be
that's
less. And
chemistry.
yeah,
Sheesh.
and so I'm like, oh, okay. So trying to just find as much info and not take credit for any of figuring it out, but just watching and learning from other people. So great. I think there's like avenues, and this is how I try to do what I do. We'll see. Well, I try not to do like where there's people that everything's a secret.
Yeah,
Like, you
exactly.
go figure it out on your own.
Yeah, yeah, gatekeepers.
That's trash to me.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
like that. For me, ask me anything, I'll tell you. I
That's why I'm
started getting
asking you.
in. Yeah, it's when I started getting into
This
this
is
stuff.
awesome.
It was all on YouTube. Like when I started thinking, oh, resin casting is so much fun, but it's limited to what I can do. My free time, trying to not take away from my wife and my kids, trying to do it all after hours. There's only so
Yeah.
much hours left. And so I was like, I always loved vinyl toys. Maybe, what if I could turn barely into a vinyl? And then I started trying to research, and it was like, oh my gosh, they want you to order a minimum of 1,000 pieces. I can't move 1,000 pieces of my little quirky little bear.
Right.
And it's at least $10,000 minimum. And I'm like, oh crap.
Exactly.
And so I started just looking and looking, and I just kept knocking on the doors of factories. I would stay up late because they're up on a different time zone, and just contact and reach out. And I think some people are super freaked out about Alibaba, especially 8 or 9 years ago, because
Hey,
scams and stuff.
I
But
understand.
nowadays, it's far more reputable. And with the app, you can find,
That's how I was able to get my own pop protectors, to be
dude,
honest
that's
with you.
dope.
To be honest with
Yeah.
you.
You can find, well, nowadays they have the Alibaba verified
Yeah,
vendors and
exactly.
factories, and which wasn't as prevalent 8 or 9 years ago. But I would just contact. And finally I found a factory that was like, no, minimum of 100. So they only made me do a
Ex-
hundred,
exactly.
and it was $5,000. And I was like, okay. So I sat down, and being able to have the ability to do some freelance design as a graphic artist or an animator, I just cranked out some different projects, found stuff, and just socked that money away till I had 5 grand. And then I did my first run of figures on my own in
Okay,
vinyl.
so since because now I want to go into because I'm literally in the same space as you, so I'm really soaking up game right now. That's
Sure.
why I really appreciated even being able to have this interview. I can say that over and over again. How did you get business? Like what was your marketing? How did you market yourself to be able to attract the business? Obviously, you have to have a portfolio and everything, right? But how was your process of setting all that stuff up?
For me, I just, I put out some feelers to friends and just said, hey, if you know anybody looking for some animation, some logo design, a logo animation, any help tweaking a website, um, let me know. So just really relying on connections
Word of
I made
mouth,
over
yeah.
the years. And then I had a digital, like a video portfolio on Vimeo,
Oh,
and I had
Vimeo.
my yeah, and I had my own website that I would post work that I had done. Um, the ad agency I worked for in Orange County, they were super cool with letting me any projects I worked on, I could put them up as long as I stated worked on sections, this from this. These were my responsibilities. And
Right,
luckily for
right.
me, some of the projects that I wanted to post, I did all of it. Animation. I got some illustration assets from like some key assets from our graphic designer, but and I would call out, illustrated all of these assets, animated entire video, did all,
The
called
credits,
out,
pretty much, yeah.
yeah, credited all, and so just I don't know if you call it dumb luck or just
Nah,
the
just
luck
putting a
of,
certain energy out there and attracting it back.
yeah.
That's it. That's it.
But the relationships really were valuable to me. Like, that's why I just believe, man, don't gatekeep, don't be a jerk, you know, like,
Agreed,
and
agreed.
you put that energy out there and treat people right, and people will be inspired to treat you right too, right?
And that, oh, I
So
mean, that's why I created this podcast to like to learn from people. Like I called it a voyage. I'm going on a voyage with you. So like I want to talk to people and learn from them. We all
sure.
learn together, right?
Yeah.
Gatekeeping is stupid right now. We have too much resource, right? You really
Mhm.
can't even keep anything to yourself these days. So I don't even know what all the stress and struggle will be for. But now I
Well,
want to
some of it
move.
I feel like if you're trying to gatekeep, you're afraid. Be careful. Well, I believe this. I feel like
Say what you
you're
want to
afraid
say.
of being a one trick pony.
Yeah, yeah,
You have to hide it all. Like what for me, telling people everything I know helps me want to know new things.
exactly. You just
You
keep
know?
building.
Yeah. And it keeps me inspired to grow because then I don't want to just be doing that one thing. That's why I have all kinds of little random other characters that may never see the light of the day, or sometimes there'll be a chance to be like, oh, I could do this or I could do that, you know?
Exactly, exactly. So, okay, fast forward to you finally started getting some business in graphic design. You were really starting to get word of mouth and everything.
Mhm.
What was because that's a beautiful transition to be able to move from working for people in a way to finally being able to work for yourself, right? So,
Mhm.
what was that first transition like where you created your first collection of bears or figures that was supposed to come out and you solidified it as a business said, this is going to be the collection that comes out on this date. You know what I'm saying? Like how did that get started? Because that is like this is launch date. Like what was launch
Yeah.
date like?
At
Or
launch
launch
date,
week, whatever.
it was fun. So barely where I kind of did the resins, that was my official launch of barely is, and it's easy to remember for me every year is April 1st,
Okay.
April Fool's Day. Because I'm like, this might be the most foolish thing I ever do. Is try to do this the resin casting and art and stuff. And so I'm gonna go April 1st, 2018. But then pursuing the vinyls, the first run of vinyls I did was I gave myself a goal of Designer Con. I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh,
that
yes, I am very
convention.
much. Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. And so for me, it was I live up in Ventura County in
Okay.
California. So I'm about an hour and a half away. So I'm like, it's a local con. So I don't have to spend all this kind of crazy money in travel. I'm already spending money getting these vinyls made, but that's going to be my introduce barely in vinyl form to the world, Designer Con 2019.
Awesome.
And so that's was it 2019? Now I'm thinking, is it 2018 or 19? I can't, I think it might have been, well, it doesn't matter, but
It was a
either
while
18 or
ago, yeah.
19. Yeah, COVID really messed me up, man.
Man,
Having that
COVID.
time, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And it made us reset, man. It really did. It
Yeah,
made us reset. It made you
yeah,
really understand, like, wait a minute, what would life be like if all this was gone? Like, whoa.
yeah,
That was definitely a culture shock.
yeah,
And that was a culture shock.
yeah.
But
But having that date to push towards and going, this is when I want to launch. I mean, I'm late night up on the phone with the factory. You said you were shipping these yesterday. They
wow.
haven't shipped yet. Oh, 2 days from now. I'm like, wait, no, come on. They got to be here by this time.
Like
And,
now, yes.
some of that stress of getting them. And they literally showed up to my house. I left for Designer Con on Friday morning. On Thursday night, they showed up from China to my house. And so I'm opening all the boxes, checking
Making
everything,
sure they're
making
not
sure.
broken, all type of stress. Quality
Well, yeah.
control at the last
Yeah.
minute.
Well, then the way I did the first run of them was the boxes looked the same for all of them. So I had these stickers I had to place individually on every box to show the different colorways. Because when I launched it at DesignerCon, I launched three colorways.
Wow.
And but it was it was called Barely Dead, and it was barely with skeleton bones on him. And so there was the OG, which is black, barely with white
Hmm.
bones. Then
Right?
there was blue body with white bones, which was barely ice, and then uh, barely electric, which was like a neon pink with green neon bones. And so those three launched, and the pink and green one was Designer Con exclusive. Like I'm like I have to do something to make
Yeah,
it
to hype it
punchy.
up.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, so those were the three that launched at Designer Con.
Okay, so what was it like managing the business from that point on? Like, how did your, I guess, the traffic come into your business, like as far as sales and having to like ship, and what was it like? What was
Sure.
the traffic like?
So it was great selling stuff like that at Designer Con because no shipping, right? You just
Yeah,
hand it
right
over
on,
and
right there,
cash in the pocket, hand it
cash to
over.
hand. Yeah.
But then, I didn't sell out, and there were plenty of people that had shown interest in Barely on my Instagram. That's mainly
Hmm.
where I did stuff was through Instagram, and I had having experience making websites. I love WordPress and building sites. I used to love building sites for people on WordPress because it's called a content management system that
Right,
they
right.
can like. I'm a creator. I'm not a maintainer.
I
So I
completely
loved
understand
building
that.
it, teaching them how to maintain it and go, there you
Yeah, there
go.
you go.
Your baby now.
There you go.
So I had the experience of doing that. So I was able to build myself a little e-commerce site to drop stuff on. And then so when I got home, I took about a week of time to count inventory, decompress a little bit, and then I dropped them on my site and I sold a good chunk of the rest of them. There ended up being 100 of the black and white, the open edition one, and 50 blue and white and 50 of the pink and green.
That's awesome.
And so I sold a number of them at DesignerCon, then had some when I got home. And that would it was in 2019 because that was in November 2019 because then in 2020 in February. So I still had, I would sell some stuff on my Instagram to answer your question. Through Instagram, I would post and people would reach out and we would just do a PayPal goods and services and
Right,
I'd
right.
ship it out. Or I'd say, oh, you could jump over to my site. Some people would be like, oh, I don't want to make an account. Can I just pay you
Yeah,
through? I'm like, sure, whatever,
yeah. Whatever
whatever
works.
way gets cash in my hand and a total
Exactly.
yours, let's do it. I'm not particular.
Exactly. You can DM me.
Yeah, for sure. And I still do a lot of that. Even when I would do products up on Twitch, my moderator just collects everybody's Instagram handles, and
That's
then
awesome.
afterwards we just go through.
Market. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah. So I sold, like I've said, I felt good about how much I sold, and I'm like, oh, I'll have these around, and I can slowly sell them, whatever. And then in early February of 2020. I get a DM on Instagram from Reese O'Brien.
Awesome.
And he's like, hey, I need to talk to you. Can we set up a call? And for me, I immediately went like, did I step on his toes?
Yeah.
He was doing the tiny ghost with the bones.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that that's like skeletons on things. For me, the love of that goes all the way back to Karate Kid, with the
Right.
villains in that had their
Absolutely.
skeleton suits.
Exactly.
But I'm like, I don't, I look up to this guy. I hope he doesn't think I like was stepping on his toes. So I call him and he's like, hey, I think we should do this together. We should bring Barely into BIM Toy. Let's do it. Let's make an announcement. I'm like, sweet. We
That's
talked some of the
awesome.
details. And as soon as they announced on their Instagram, my Instagram got flooded,
That's dope.
inquiries, and my site sold out of the leftover vinyls.
Wow.
And because people were the BIM Toy Tiny Ghost collector fan base, they're rabid, man. And so when Reese stamped it, I mean, that was probably the best thing for me to get eyes on stuff early on. My first run of vinyls, I'm doing independent. I launch it in November, don't sell out, but I feel good about it. February, Reese stamps it kind of like I support this guy. People are like, sweet, then we do too. And they just like bought up my stuff. And so then the fourth vinyl that I was going to drop on my own on my site, they crashed my site. My site couldn't keep up,
That's dope.
and so that was I really have, I'll never say enough good things about Reese,
And it's funny, you talk about how like almost like somebody gets a stamp of approval. The way I found out about your figures was through that Gasolcast. They kept
Oh,
on,
yeah, I
yeah,
love Chris and Heather.
yeah. So they kept on talking about how he kept well, like for instance, Chris would bring up show on the screen, and I think he had like this black like one with the beard was like black and had like a pink or green nose or something like that. And
Oh, the bot, that's that. I still do that every one of my figures, I do the electric colorway, that
Yeah,
neon pink with
exactly.
green. So it's basically it's the Bear Latour,
Yeah, he has that one too.
but
Yes.
the where it's blue is all pink,
Yeah,
and where purple is all green, and then the face is yellow, and it kind of yeah.
beautiful.
He's
Beautiful.
he has that in the background of
Yeah, of the show,
their
yeah.
show. Yeah, he loves that one.
So like yeah, and that's how I found out about you and I ended up contacting you. Of course I didn't expect you to answer, but
Ah,
I appreciate it, man. It
oh,
was wow, that was it was a blessing. But yeah, now I'm gonna ask you pretty much like the last question. Like what's next for barely available?
yeah.
What's about to happen?
That's a great question. If you figure it out, you can, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just doing so this is it's still very much it's a little small business, but it is I still have a full-time job and my wife and kids, and one of my boys is a teenager now. So fortunate for me, I've been able to connect, BIM was a great connection, and then that kind of wound down after COVID was kind of winding on and they changed directions, and we weren't partnering together. But fortunate for me, one of the very first exclusive barely I ever did was with Plastic Empire out of Georgia.
Yes, I
They
live in
do.
Georgia. I was
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So Dustin's a great guy. I love that guy. We did a exclusive to his shop with one of the releases, and he was the first person to see the barely that I had. I was hand casting little 3-inch tall bear Latour is what I call him, and he's like, we should turn that into a vinyl. And I was like, oh, I love that idea, but I just signed up with BIMToy and we're kind of not doing
Resin, yeah. Yeah.
anything. So I was saying, so Dustin at Plastic Empire, is that a good pickup for you?
Yeah, that's good. That's fine enough
Okay.
for me.
Dustin at Plastic Empire had reached out about doing, the Bear tour. He'd seen the resins, and I was like, oh, with kind of what I'm doing with BIMToy, we're gonna hold off on doing anything else. But thanks for the encouragement. And he was always from the beginning, he was super encouraging. So fast forward to the day BIMToy kind of announced, hey, we're shutting down. Reese is gonna go do stuff with Fugitive. Joe and Arseny are gonna keep Bottleneck Gallery going and doing their thing. But BIM Toys, and then they said Barely's gonna keep doing his thing. About an hour later, Dustin from Plastic Empire is like, so that mean maybe we can do something? And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, let's chat. So he
Let's
was
go.
there like right when the opportunity opened. So we jumped in and we did Bear Latour. We've released 4 colorways of Bear Latour so far. We've got one more left that's coming pretty soon. And then at San Diego Comic-Con, we released Barely Krang.
Oh, TMNT.
Yeah. So
Ooh,
this
that
is
is hot. Why did I not see this one?
it
That
was
is
it
hot.
was exclusive to $7 a pop. They had
Ah,
at San Diego. And this is the metal, so you can kind of see that shimmer. This
yeah,
is
it's
the metallic.
beautiful.
And so this was fun. And we've got some more colorways of that coming soon. I'll just say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are from New York, so there might be something New York related as to when the next drop is.
You know what's crazy? I love exclusives, so thank you. So, what is the process like for licensing? Like that's one thing I have never ever understood, to be honest with you. So, what's the licensing process like?
So really, it depends. Like for us, we're doing runs of 100. They're small run figures. It really kind of fits in the parody homage kind of thing, and
Yeah,
we're really kind of flying under the radar
good.
because 100 pieces, it's not worth them to loiter
Yeah,
up
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
do anything.
yeah.
So, Dustin and I've talked about there's a couple things we've got some ideas on where we're like, okay, so if we do a run of like 500 of this figure, this will have to reach out to these guys, get licensing or whatever. But
Yeah,
right
yeah.
right now, it's kind of like,
And the reason why I asked that is because Diss Trackers just got taken out by Funko.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm just you know how it is right now.
yeah.
I don't want to see any more businesses kind of like go out because of, almost like showing. I don't even know how to describe it. I don't even take it as copy. It's almost like paying homage to, right? With
Yeah.
your own figure, with every, like, it's still your figure. It's almost like they're cosplayed and paying
Yeah.
homage to the legends, man. So
Yeah.
I just hate to see people get, messed over because of that. But at the same time, I understand the business side of it.
Sure.
It's
I
annoying.
th- I think it's all in how you frame it too, right? Like
Yeah,
for us, the first step really is like a cease and desist.
yeah.
And if they say, "Hey, you need to stop," then you just
You
stop
just stop. Okay.
because they're saying, "Hey, you're playing in our sandbox and we're not cool with it."
Right, right.
Most companies, like especially with like a small run, this is really an homage to
It's really nice.
things, man. We're just trying to give some kind of feedback to say, "Hey, we love this. We grew up with this." For me, Motu, Ninja Turtles, saying I love this stuff. It's the same reason I did a Barely called Barely Lives, and it was
Right.
from the movie They Live with
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Roddy
Roddy
Piper
Roddy
and
Piper and the Alien
yeah.
movie. Yeah.
So Barely is dressed in a three-piece suit, but his face is like the alien.
That's hard.
It's just stuff that I love,
I don't
and
think there's anything wrong with that, to be honest with you.
no. And but if they have a problem with it, I'm happy to say, cool, I won't
Yeah.
do any more. No
Yeah. Yeah.
problem. It's yours. And if I want to do more in the future, I'll reach out and see if you're interested in doing a license. But right now there is some gray area with parody and homage and like if you see, not to keep bringing up Tiny Ghost, but I think Reese is doing it right. All the soulmates he's doing where
No, awesome. Absolutely. Yeah.
they look like little kids cosplaying.
Yeah. As little
It's
ghosts.
that's as homage as you can get, right?
Yeah.
There,
It's
because
an
like
old school
I
trick or
think the
treating.
Batman, he's got like it's like a beanie pulled down over his eyes and cut out
It's
with taped
cool.
on ears. It looks like a kid made a
It's
cosplay.
smart.
It is. So he's doing it way right. But yeah, so as far as licensing, there's definitely some risk involved, I guess,
Well,
in over under.
this is the way I look at it. First off, we are keeping these industries going. Like, we fans. Fans first, you keep the industry going, right? We keep a lot of licenses relevant even when we do cosplay our characters as these things, because I'm thinking about doing the same thing with my character Orby and cosplaying him in certain things for Halloween and dropping the
Sure.
stickers. I want to do something, right?
Yeah,
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's fun. It's like you said, it's paying homage, and I think it should keep going. To be honest with you, I
thanks,
think it should
man.
keep going. It keeps
Yeah,
it keeps everything relevant. It keeps
yeah,
it. You get what I'm saying? It keeps
yeah.
things relevant.
Well,
That's the whole
we're
point
gonna
of it.
we'll test that theory because with Plastic Empire we've got 24 new designs coming, and they're pretty much the majority of them are shout outs to pop culture. So, we're rolling the
Absolutely.
dice and seeing and what's coming. So, the first one of those, we're also exploring for the first time. See, the figures are low run around between 100 and 150,
Hmm.
but for the first time, we're doing a 100 run figure with opportunity at a chase.
Awesome.
And so we're testing that out, but it's going to be an homage character, and it coming soon. And so we're trying to have fun and just be smart about what we're doing, but some of it's calculated risk.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah,
So,
dude.
look, like I said, I can talk to you all day about things,
Sure,
but like I said, I don't want to hold up your day.
you're good.
I appreciate this time, and I learned a whole lot. I
Oh yeah,
learned a lot.
anytime, man. My Instagram's always open.
I appreciate that. Same
Absolutely.
here. Same here. But you have a wonderful day. I
You
can't
too.
wait to post this episode for others to learn. I'm
Thanks.
excited, and take care.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye bye.